Good evening. We begin tonight with the no longer presumptive Republican nominee, Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, Republicans, he's officially your guy. As of today, Trump reached the magical number of 1237 and then some. He's gotten a little extra in the delegates there to put him over the top. Now, this morning, the Donald secured 29 unbound delegates who told the AP that they would be supporting him at the convention. That's what's putting him over that 1237 mark and will now undoubtedly hand him the nomination. And everyone is chiming in on this today, even President Obama.
I think it's fair to say that they are surprised by the Republican nominee. They are not sure how seriously to take some of his pronouncements, but they're rattled by him, and for good reason, because a lot of the proposals that he's made display either ignorance of world affairs or a cavalier attitude.
And have a listen to what Trump had to say about rattling nerves around the world.
When you rattle someone, that's good, because many of the world, as you know, many of the countries in our world, a beautiful world, have been absolutely abusing us and taking advantage of us. So if they're rattled in a friendly way, we're going to have great relationships with these countries. But if they're rattled in a friendly way, that's a good thing, John, not a bad thing.
But he also
And joining me now to discuss the Trump nomination are my guest panel. First, we have Bridget Todd. She's a Democratic political strategist and journalist. Also, W. James Antle. He's the politics editor at the Washington Examiner. Welcome both. Jim, I want to start with you. You're right up today on Trump clinching the nomination, basically against all odds. Calls for giving him credit where credit is apparently now due. Right. Given all the airtime that Trump has received, are you implying that perhaps he's been treated unfairly by the press?
No, not at all. What I do think, though, is that regardless of where you stand on his policy proposals, his gut-level political instincts are fairly good, and that's why he was able to defeat what everybody thought was a really impressive field of Republican candidates going in. Trump got a really big question right when you talk about his media coverage. Most political professionals did not believe that even a candidate as famous as Donald Trump could get so far on earned media, just showing up on TV, not spending very heavily on ads, not really having much of a traditional campaign apparatus at all. Trump bet that you could, and he bet correctly. I don't think very many people who are not as famous as him could replicate that necessarily, but in his particular case, it worked for him.
Well, he's got the built-in brand name right now. Bridget, over to you. Yesterday's IG report about Hillary Clinton's email rule breaking, as it were, will certainly be a tender spot that Trump is going to obviously seize on for attack. How do you see Clinton defending against that if she were head-to-head with Trump in November?
You know, I think so far we've seen an interesting strategy from Clinton. You don't actually see her really responding to Trump's attacks head-on. And so I wonder if that's the strategy her team has sort of recommended, just sort of don't call attention to them, maybe people won't notice them. And part of me wonders if your average voter really cares that much about the email issue. You know, certainly I think it'll be a big issue for those of us in the sort of political know, but I wonder how your everyday voter is going to feel about that.
Well, I think obviously we're hearing that from people on the right. So the voters on the right side are obviously going to be right behind Trump in attacking her. At least I don't know how much that might hurt her in the social media world, and that's the world that we live in. You guys have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it really depends. I don't think people are going to pay very close attention to the details of what's classified, what's not classified, what are the exact rules the State Department had for how you handle your emails. Right. But they might, if it reinforces things that they already have problems with her about, if they think she's not trustworthy, if they think she's not transparent, if they think she's hiding something, that's the kind of thing where a controversy like this could reinforce those pre-existing doubts. If they didn't already have those concerns, it might not be that much of an issue. It might be too technical.
And as you know, Trump owns the Twitter sphere, so she's got to contend with that.
Exactly. I think Trump really knows what he's doing when it comes to social media. He's really good at branding people. You know, when he hits people on certain issues, it tends to stick. And I think Clinton's really going to have to, you know, watch herself, I think.
Now that Trump has secured his name on the Republican ticket for November, he will obviously be able to focus strictly on the general election. And although the Democrats haven't quite officially picked one nominee, unlike the Republican Party, though, the Democrats are not fractured. In fact, they're united in attacking Trump. You have both Democratic candidates railing against him. You have Elizabeth Warren pouncing on him. And generally, every Democratic Party leader is on the attack against him. Does this help or hurt Trump? And does this propel the Democratic message? Jim?
Well, I think both parties are pretty united in not liking the other party's nominee. I don't think that there's much of a question there. I do think you do see some pockets of resistance to Trump, especially still in the elite sections of the party. House Speaker Bryan is moving towards an endorsement, but hasn't endorsed yet. There's a lot of people saying that I support the nominee, as if we don't know who the nominee is, but we do. So that is something that Trump. But you are starting to see one of the reasons why Trump has gone from being way back in the polls to being competitive with Clinton is a lot of rank and file Republican voters are starting to come home now that the race is over, and you're probably going to see some of that on the Democratic side once Bernie Sanders is finally finished off.
Bridget, your thoughts?
I agree. I think that the Democratic Party really needs unity right now, so I'm happy to see that both candidates are united against Trump. I think the last thing we need is folks saying, I'm only going to support my candidate, and if my candidate isn't the nominee, then I'm not going to be voting, because that's certainly not what we need. I think most Democrats agree that a Trump presidency would not be good for anybody, and I think avoiding that is probably the most important thing.
I think Jim would agree that some people on the right would say that a Trump presidency would...
certainly find some, yes.
Absolutely. Now, lastly, Trump says that he wants to debate Bernie. We all heard that yesterday, right? Bernie's camp says, let's rumble. This would be totally unsanctioned. Nothing like this has ever happened in television history. Will this, or can this even happen?
I don't think it's going to happen. Earlier today, the Sanders campaign tweeted that they hoped that Trump would not back out. They really want to do it. Yeah. Trump mentioned that he would do it for charity if people donated money to charity. I think this would be a disaster for Clinton. I think this would be the fantasy that a lot of folks have, a non-Clinton race. I think this would really, the optics of her sitting out of this would be really bad for her.
Well, do you think she'd really have to be invited, though? Couldn't she just kind of self-invite?
Well, this is sort of the one area where Sanders and Trump have a little bit of a common interest. And Sanders wants to continue to create the impression that he's still actively in the race, that there's some kind of a chance. And Trump wants to have any opportunity to needle Hillary Clinton, and also to maybe demoralize some of Sanders' supporters. He maybe gets some small subset of them, gets a larger subset of them maybe to stay home in November. It's a little riskier for him to do this because he's actually the nominee. Sanders will not be. But it could potentially be a good publicity stunt for both of them. And Trump has given himself a way out by saying it has to raise a certain amount of money for women's health causes. So he has a plausible exit strategy if he decides he doesn't want to do it.
Very clever.
This has all been unprecedented stuff, right? 2016. Thank you, guys. Hopefully we'll see you back here soon. Thank you both. Bridget Todd, Democratic political strategist and journalist, W. James Antle, politics editor at the Washington Examiner. Thank you both.
Thank you.